together, so why ruin a good thing? And we have Deb here from my neighborhood, who I have come to really appreciate her great share around our area, and thought that it would be wonderful to share her with you. And so I think I will start off with Deb and let her share herself with you.
Hi folks, I'm Deb. I'm an alcoholic. Can you hear me or no? Should I yell or something? Step up. On my own, I cannot stay away from a drink. When I was in second grade, I had to get before a microphone and sing, and I can't carry a tune, and it was Moon River, and that's a really difficult song to sing. I got to Moon, and my voice cracked, and I vowed never to get in front of a microphone again. And when it came time for me, after I became a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, to qualify, to tell you all what makes me eligible for Alcoholics Anonymous, to tell you that on my own I can't stay away from a drink. It was before a microphone, and for some reason that was beyond me at the time. I was given the strength to stand there and just speak, and here I am again in front of a microphone, and it's incredible to me. I feel very honored to be here in Colorado at this convention with you all, and the mountains really are stunning. I may need a little help to get a little focused. My eighth step, I made a list of all the people that I had harmed, and I really made that list in my fourth step inventory. When I came around to the eighth step, after my experiences with admitting out loud to another person what my difficulties were, what my problem was, what the exact nature of my wrongs, and finding that my entire life, my whole being was objectionable to me, and having this really wonderful experience. I think it's wonderful now. At the time, I thought it was terrifying. I was working in a flower shop. And it was around what's that holiday with all the flowers and you give your lovers Valentine's Day. And so it was around Valentine's Day. It was Valentine's Day. In flower shops, there's lots of flowers, and of course I was alone, and I was a wreck. I had been told a few weeks earlier, or months, or who knows what the time frame was. All I know is that I was pretty insane. I couldn't walk around like that anymore. Deb, you can't walk around like that anymore. And I was doing the best I could. And I had gotten to a point where I had been willing to seek spiritual help. And here I was. After having looked at who I was and how I walked around in the world and shared that out loud to someone else. I think that's one of the things for me that's very important, is that sharing out loud to someone else. And I think that's essential for me in steps 8 and 9 as well. Out loud to someone else, eyeball to eyeball in step 9. What happened to me was that I was a mess, and I was kind of paused on step 6, and there was the beer sign, and there was an AA meeting, and I knew that I could say the 7-step prayer and mean it, and I knew that I could ask God for help, but I didn't know it, and I was walking around, and it was kind of just what do I do? And I knew for me, I was absolutely certain that to drink was to die. And something that happened to me prior to my last drink at 1 a.m. on June 14, 1994, something happened to me, and that was I was introduced to the notion that power is not me, and I wasn't introduced to, it was the first time in my life I ever actually wanted to live. First time, at 27 years old, first time I ever actually wanted to live. And so I had this going on with me, and so I just asked for help, and I got through that night. And the following morning, I was saying the 3rd and 7th step prayer, and I was very well acquainted with kind of the harm that I had caused in the world and in my relationships with people, and something incredible happened to me. I had this notion that it wasn't a notion; it was the truth that I am a mistake. There are there's a long gap of time between my sisters. I have two sisters, and myself. And so I walked around, I'm a mistake. And what happened to me on that morning after saying the seventh-step prayer was this idea came into my head, well, if that was a mistake, it's a problem. It's not your problem. It's not your problem to fix. And right behind that, that's a wonderful thing. It's not my problem to fix. Was, well, maybe you're not a mistake. And I was sitting here listening to the sharing throughout the workshops here, and I'm coming to understand this idea of bearing witness of the power of God in my life. Hopefully, I can live in such a way that I'm an example of the power of God in my life. My real purpose is to be of maximum usefulness to God and the fellows around me. And that is the essence of step 9. And so if I am going to, in the third step, it says that I'm to bear witness. My difficulties are going to be relieved so that I can bear witness. In step 9, we're also told that, as God's people, we don't walk, we stand on our feet. We have some dignity. And for the first time, I was given, literally given, just out of being desperate, just out of being beaten, out of being lost and wounded and not knowing where to go, and shot and doing the best I could and meaning well and just not being able to pull it off. I was given the gift of, well, maybe it's not a mistake. Maybe you can stand with some dignity. And something happened to me when I went to make some direct amends. There was one that was very difficult to me, and there was a man in my group who said, you have to do this one eyeball to eyeball. And it was some time period had gone by because this woman would not see me because I really caused some damage. And one of the things, it was difficult for me because I had been honest in that relationship. And here I was going to be honest again. What was I to do in this relationship? And he said, you have to see this when she's willing to see you. She called me after a number of months had gone by and said, I'd like to see you. And it was my job at that point to really listen. I was to listen. But he said, you can go because you are. I'm like, how am I any different? I'm not any different. I'm still, I'm still this person. And he said, no. There's something different. She's got to see your eyes. There's something different. And that really, really made a difference to me. That really mattered. And I'm shaking like a leaf. My heart is beaten up into my throat. I hope that I'm making some kind of sense. I tend to jump around, I think, or something. I don't really know because I very, very rarely remember what it was that I shared when I sit down. Something very, very, I think it is incredibly important that I complete all of my amends. Because you never know what's going to happen. You never know. What has been true for me in my life since I became a member of Alcoholics Anonymous is that everything is shifted. All my perceptions are really completely different. Things that I anticipate are going to happen don't happen the way that I think they're going to. And, and I don't know I don't really know what that's about, except that my thinking is a little whacked, I think. But, making direct amends with my family was a difficult thing. In one instance, I have 3 nephews. I had to go to my sister and ask her if it was okay, and she said no. There's a lot of issues around alcoholism in my immediate family, and so I said okay. And I was free anyway because I became free in step 8 by praying to be willing. By knowing what my harms were. And my harms with my nephews were, I disappeared. I had been a part of their lives and I disappeared. And I've been given the honor of sharing with the oldest nephew about alcoholism for a school project of his. And I could share from the heart and my experience, and this is who I am. And with my youngest nephew, he has asked me to sponsor him in a religious spiritual endeavor, which is amazing. This also going back to the church of my family is also part of a direct amends with my mom and the church itself and myself. Not really. I don't know what that means. Who knows what that means? That's just came out of my mouth. Who knows? Now I'm all thrown off that track. Y'all are so kind, you know. That's another thing is that God, I'm among people who you're just like me. That's a real gift that I got in step 4 was that I'm not different than folks. Those prayers, my willingness to make direct amends began in step 4. They didn't start on step 8. I didn't start becoming willing on step 8. I began those prayers on step 4. And I believe also that I was given the willingness right at step 4 for some. For others, it was a little more difficult. I needed God's power and God's grace before I was able to stand on my feet and meet with people eyeball to eyeball, or in whatever fashion it turned out that it was going to be. I often had ideas before making a direct amends what the amend would look like, and very rarely did it occur that way. And that's okay, That's really okay because I already knew that I was willing to do whatever it took to set right the wrongs that I had caused. I was willing to do whatever it took to have freedom from alcohol. There's also a thing where I sometimes today get caught up in I'm going to make a direct amends because I want to feel better. And it's not what this deal is about. It's about so that I can be free, so that I can be useful. And I'll tell you, one of the most difficult things for me as an untreated alcoholic is my uselessness, my utter uselessness in the world. That was the thing that destroyed me. That was the thing that I couldn't work anymore. This is devastating. To have no purpose, to be a mistake, to be useless. Well, now here I'm given the opportunity. I'm given a new employer. I'm given a job, and I can have some use in the world. And to me, what could be better than that? What could be better than that? And it's so wonderful to be here. These folks really helped me tremendously through right from the get-go. I was blessed with being taken through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous right from the get-go. That change in perspective. I went blind just prior to being admitted into a hospital for detox and lost my vision, couldn't see. And my perspective has changed such a great deal and continues to change as long as I continue to show up and participate. One of my greatest fears was that my relationship with my family was really horrendous, and I spent a lot of time blaming them for my being a mistake, and then I got relieved of that, and then I was afraid that my mom would die before my dad. My father was always very sickly, and we were always kind of ready. And that has occurred over this past year. And I had the opportunity to make direct amends with both of my parents. And so when I went to see my mom in Florida, while she was sick and dying, it wasn't about me. It wasn't about, forgive me. It wasn't about me. It was about showing up to be with my family. And you never know. Make your direct amends. Don't pause. You never know how things are going to be. I was able to show up at my mom's funeral and at that church that I had to make the direct amends with, that I was terrified of, very frightened and very angry, and I wasn't terrified and I wasn't angry, and I was able to stand on my feet. And I don't know if I was useful or not. I believe that my presence there made a difference. I believe that it did. And it's a wonderful thing that you can't see when you're on one side of it, and I'm only beginning to see on the other side of it how things continue to change and grow. My dad is now moving up to only about 20 minutes away from me, and I'm going to see how that is. Going to see how that is. I'm not moving. My first reaction was I'm moving to California. Maybe Colorado, but I don't think that that's necessary. I don't think that I'm going to need to find that necessary, and I am looking forward to helping out and having him be a more present part of my life and being more a part of his. Some of the other amends that I made were real kind of, they seemed silly, but it seems to me that they were very important. There were hundreds of amends that I made, and some of them were just very silly. They seemed silly, or other people would say, oh, knock that off your list. Don't do that. Don't do that. If there were things that I needed to be free of, and I needed to pray to be free of, and I needed help, and I needed to do whatever it was that I needed to do. One of them was to show up at a library with 2 library books that were 7 years overdue, and the fines were going to be way out of the scope of my pocketbook, and it was all okay. And to admit to like a librarian, well, I'm an alcoholic, and this is why I didn't return the library books, and I really need to give you something now to repay this. I really need to volunteer at the library, even if that's what it takes. Just a few dollars is what it took. She understood. It's amazing how when you have the spirit of setting things right, how well received you may be. I also had people say, "Get out of my life and don't come back," and that's okay too. They're better off without me, I believe. Anyway, I think I rambled, so I'm going to just say thank you all very much.
Thank you. As I said, I came into AA August 23rd of 79, and result was directly because my wife had thrown me out of the house. She had heard about an affair, and it was like all of a sudden I had a moment of truth. I didn't like who I was or what I was doing, and I tried to deal with all the bad feelings. You're not hearing me, I'm sorry. I didn't know your name. Oh, I'm David. Oh, and so I got into this program as a result of that deal. I didn't want to stop drinking, but I thought plead insanity or do something, anything to get out of the trouble. I was married to an Italian woman. I was more afraid of my father-in-law at that moment than anybody in my life, so my motive was fear of father-in-law. It was nothing nothing honorable. And about 90 days sober, my father-in-law moved back into town. My wife, 45 days sober, invites me home. She wants to have kids. She wants to do something about this deal. And I was quite amazed that that had changed. And he came into town and he said, okay, well, we're going to sit down tonight and we're going to iron out all these problems. And I went to an AA meeting and I raised my head and I said, I owe an amends to my father-in-law. How do I go about it? And a man said, what step are you on? And I said, well, I'm on the first step. And he says, well, you can't. But I give him a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and explain that that's the process that you're going through. And then when you get to that step, you will do everything you can to do to right the wrong. And I started to see what they talked about, that just saying I'm sorry was not what the deal was about. It was a demonstration. And that the steps before the ninth step were crucial because the man I was could not demonstrate anything but drinking and ruining everybody's life that I got involved in. But to be of a different being, to be, as was shared, of dignity of God's children, walking and trying to be of a different condition, that things that I did were intolerable. I could not do that anymore. So I have to fix this because our relationship has to be on a different basis. And my wife divorced me 8 months sober. She didn't understand this thing. She wanted to have kids, and so we went our own way. And of course, ex-wives come up on inventory, and you owe amends. And so I'm sitting there saying, okay, God, I'm going to be amazed to see how you work this out, because I really don't have a right to intrude in her life. As was shared by Deb, some people do not want to be brought to that discomfort, and you have no right for your guilt to impose your guilt on them or your need on them, but to wait in God's time. And I was up in New York, she was down in Atlanta, Georgia, and about a year and a half into this deal, I got a bill that should have gone to her from Rich's department store for $265, and that's exactly the amount I have in my savings account. And I'm sitting there saying, do I pay the bill, or do I go out and buy the things that I would like to do? And some little voice said, you pay the bill. And you help her over this hurdle. I am getting everything I need from being involved in this program, and my life is turning around, and maybe this is something to help her with. And so I sent the money, wrote a letter saying thank you, or I hope this helps you. And it wasn't like, now you owe me, or you need to call me, or anything like that, but it was just saying, I hope this helps you. And as a result, she called a few weeks later, and there was a dialogue. And now I could talk to her if opportunity presented itself to share with her about things. And 3 months down the road, she calls me up and says, I got a problem. Now, instead of get the hell out of my life, she has a problem and I'm going to help her, right? And she goes, my roommate's moving out in 30 days to get married, and this guy I'm seeing wants me to move in with him. What should I do? Now, do I respond to that as an ex-husband or what? No, I try and respond to it as this program has taught me to share with people. And I say, you don't need to make a decision for something 30 days down the road right now. Maybe you look at your options. We never communicated well, and maybe you need to talk to him about your fears, your worries. Who am I to say what's too early, what's too late? So it really was more about just allowing her some ideas so she can make her own decision. And I said, I'm not moving down to Georgia, so I can't room with you. And 2 days later, I get a letter from a publishing company down in Georgia asking me to come down immediately to work on a book. And she picks me up at the airport, and I know at that moment that we're really not to get together, that there was not the right time, or that wasn't the truth about what it was about at that point. And we'd keep in touch, and a few weeks later, how you doing? Yes, he moved in, and about 9 months go by, and she calls me up and says that she's engaged. Now again, in my inventory, I saw that I was a sorry husband, I was a sorry brother, I was a sorry employee, I was a sorry whatever, and I know that I had injured this woman by being her husband and being an example of a husband, and maybe that would have affected her in her choice, or I'm not going there, I will never, whatever. So to see her making that motion of getting back into life was important to see, and I was happy that she was finding love in life again. And 10 minutes later she calls me back in tears. Now the deal is she's Italian, Roman Catholic, divorced, living in sin. And she called Daddy to get his approval, and he said, I don't know any Maria. Click. And then all of a sudden I realized why ex-husband had to be put in a position of giving fatherly advice maybe over the phone about her being allowed to make her own decision about her love life and this man. And I said, well, there's only one thing we can do, Maria, and that is we call Ms. Magazine, we get some photographers there, and the ex-husband will give the bride away. I mean, that's the least I can do. And she started to laugh a little bit, and I said, hey, your happiness is your responsibility. That relationship is between you and him. I might have an opinion about it, and your father-in-law, or your father might have an opinion about it, but it's all about your business. And she invited me to the wedding. I didn't give her away, and I didn't think that was fair to him. That I was invited. It was like she was trying to prove a point, and I thought, no. And I think, again, what this book says is that we really need to be concerned about how it affects others. Jealousy and all that stuff. 7 years passed. She got pregnant on her honeymoon, had a kid, has 2 kids now, and 7 years went by, and I heard from her, and I learned she had gotten involved in Al-Anon. She had left him. He was a drunk. Her best friend was an Al-Anon. What do you have to lose? Let's look at this. Your first husband, second husband, father. Maybe you have been affected by alcoholism. And I learned that he was in AA and had just joined AA, and she was in Al-Anon, and it helped me see why I needed to go down the path I needed to, and she needed to go down her path to get to her truth. I just got a letter from her after 10 years of silence back in May, and it was a very interesting letter. You've been on my mind. I have fond memories. The kids are this and that, and just a little bit about her life. And then I got another letter just recently, and it was more about we need to visit, and some other ideas. And that's an interesting thing about coming up here this weekend and having that about this woman wanting me to maybe participate in her life right now. I have to look at how it affects others. You know, she's married, she has kids. What would that do to that relationship? And I really have to see that I have no business being involved with her right now. As much as she might try and put down the deal that I should get involved and we need to work certain things out, I have to pray about it and realize that no, it might be fun, it might be nice to go back into that deal, but there's other people, and I really need to look at that. So there I am, and here she is. How about that? How about Linda?
Wow. Thanks, David. My name's Linda, and I'm a grateful member of Al-Anon. A little overwhelmed over being up here. I was out in the front of the building, literally, you know, where you drive in for the registration, and kind of looking at the road that brought me here, and not just physically the road that brought me here, but doing a little reflection on how I got here. I've been hanging around with you guys over 10 years, and it's been quite a party, and I thank you for that. So I'm out there kind of looking down the road, and David comes up behind me and asked me to be on this panel. And so here I am. And again, thanks to you guys, I'm going to be able to be here. I'm going to be present. I'm going to be as present as I possibly can for myself and for what's going on here. It's been a pretty incredible conference. And so I want to share with you about step 8 and 9. So I come across this little phrase, make a list, and I go, yes, something I can finally do. You know, my pre-Al-Anon, I made those lists, and that's how I proved to you that my life was manageable. Go to the cleaners, go to the grocery store, eggs, bacon, cheese, you know. So when it came time to make a list, that was easy. Make a list, check it twice, find out who's naughty or nice, you bet. I could do that. My dad, my children, my husband's with an S, boy. Make that list, put him down there. That part was easy, right? But you know what happens in this step? It's almost like I had done the steps earlier with my group and with my sponsor. And all of a sudden, wow, there was a world out there. Now I'm going to have inner exchanges with other people. Wow, what kind of program do I have to take into this? You know, I couldn't live on an island all by myself. Now I'm going to have to really go in there with the tools that I've been given and talk to you guys. Pretty scary. And then I remembered that step 3, I turned my will and my life over to a higher power that was gentle and good and kind. And I had learned to trust that there wasn't anything that I had to do by myself any longer. That this God of my understanding was going to be right there with me. So that became the willing part. I became willing to make some of these amends. And then you taught me, like I didn't have to do it alone. I had a God of my understanding. And I could also ask for help. And I went to my group. My group is the Monday Midday Downtown Al-Anon group. And they're in Nashville, Tennessee. And the reason I chose that group, because when I first got into Al-Anon, I was a very busy woman. And this group met on the lunch hour, and it was a block and a half from my office. And I could get over there and I could get back. And once I walked through that door, I never left. You know, from the first time I walked through that door, I started being a changed person. So I went to this group, these people that I loved and trusted, and I said, I have some concern about, starting this amends stuff. I'm going to have to get out there. I was a twice divorced woman. I was single at the time. I was going through the steps with a wonderful Al-Anon woman who was taking me through the steps by using the big book, which again changed my life. But I said, I've got some concerns about doing this. And my home group said, you don't have to do it by yourself. we'll give you a safety pin so we can be with you. And they did that. They all held that safety pin, and then I knew, again, that I'm not by myself. I have a God of my understanding. I have the support and belief in me from my home group. So I'm not up there making those amends by myself. Pretty incredible. So then it came time to make those direct amends after I made the list. And my sponsor that had loving me, taking me through the steps, she said, your character, your personality, she says, you have a tendency to pick at scabs. And she says, if you get in front of these people, you're going to go off. She said, and I'm going to help you not to have to make amends on the way you make amends. Because as an Al-Anon, I knew if I could get in front of him one more time and explain it one more way, just a little bit different, that I thought he might get it that time. You know, and that's not what it was about. These were amends for myself, for my own healing, for my own growth, for my own recovery. So this loving woman gave me a piece of paper, and it only had about 10 words on it, and that's all I could say. So when I went to make my direct amends to my family members, to my former husbands, whatever, if I got that look, or if any kind of words started coming back at me, the only thing I could do was rewind the tape and just say those 10 words. And that kept me clean on how I made those amends. That was a big, big deal for me. Big, big deal for me. Miracles happened. There was a woman early in recovery who had said something in a meeting that I immediately, she showed up on my list because I thought, I didn't like what she said. I'd gone to another meeting, and they had counted off 1, 2, 3, and the ones went in one room, and the twos went in one room, and the threes went in one room. And I'd been watching this woman, and I didn't like her. She was probably just like me, and I didn't like her. And I'd always get stuck in the room with her. And I'm talking real early recovery. I'm still married to my former husband. And she said in this meeting, she says, if you think that there hasn't been infidelity, she says, you're fooling yourself. And I got so angry at her because I knew that he knew that that was the one thing that I wouldn't stand for, you know, because I knew that that's what in my mind, and that, you know, pre-sickness, that's what had been the downfall of my my first marriage. So I knew that that wasn't our case. Well, of course, you know, more comes to light, and more healing starts happening, and more things start happening, and of course that was the case. But I was so angry at this woman, and she stopped coming to that meeting. And so she showed up on my amends list, and I'm talking, this is after, you know, I saw her probably in that first year, and I'm talking 4 years later that I'm going through the steps. And I'm literally sitting on my front porch, and I'd really cleaned up my list, and but this woman was still there, and I didn't even know her name. I didn't even know how to contact her. And I said, God, this feels like something important, but I really don't know how to do it. And I am not kidding. I look up, and this woman is walking down my street. Walking down my street. As soon as that prayer was out of my mouth, I said, I don't know how to do this one. I don't know how to find her. I'll just get on with it. She says, and I went running up to her, absolutely scared her to death, you know. And I said, do you know, about 5, 6 years ago, you said such and such in a meeting, and I got so mad at you, and I was so angry, and I, you know, went home and put pins in your body and all that kind of stuff. And you know what? The only thing you were telling was the truth, and I wasn't healthy enough to even be able to hear the truth and accept the truth. And now what I know, the truth is the only thing that's going to get me through this deal, and thank you, thank you, thank you. And she's kind of backed up like, whoa. She says, I walk, but I never come down this street. I don't know what happened, but sometimes at that corner, something made me come down the street. She says, I never come down the street. And we lived a block and a half from each other. I haven't seen her since, you know, and I'm still hanging around these rooms for over 10 years, and I haven't seen that woman. But I was so caught up in making my amends, I needed that woman to show up in my life that day. You know, I needed her that day, and God heard me. So, I did my deal. I did my amends. Healing started happening to me. Miracles. Healing with my children. Oh my goodness, with my children. You know, I think it's important that I say that as an Al-Anon, active drinking in our home, parenting, I did so much damage. And I don't know if you hear that. as a pre-Al-Anon in an active situation, I did so much damage with my children. I was so focused on him. I ignored him. I minimized him. I controlled him. I was the one slamming the doors. I was the one rattling the dishes. I was the crazy acting person, So I made amends to my daughters. And one thing that kind of, after all the obvious amends that we know in our hearts that need to be there, I need to tell you about a financial amends that I made to my daughters that kind of slipped up on me, because I think I'm supposed to share all of my experience. And that was in early marriage and early with these young children around Christmas time. I didn't think that I needed to make any financial amends to my daughters, because I had, I was the primary breadwinner always through my adult life. And so I didn't think I needed to make any financial amends to my daughter. I had provided for them. And then I got to thinking back of at Christmas time when Aunt Martha would send them $5, I just stuck it in my pocket because I was buying the shoes, I was buying the groceries. When their birthdays came up and they would get a little $15 check, I'd say, "Oh, isn't this cute? Your grandmother sent this. Isn't that nice?" And I had just kind of put those into my pocket, into my bank. I never identified that to them as their money because I thought I was always, doing the big deal, the big money. So I had to make financial amends to them, saying, it wasn't a lot, but it was something that had happened. I had been I'd been dishonest with that. Another thing, when it came time to make those amends to the big people that I continued to give my power away to, and I'm talking, I'm over 50 years old. This is 10 years ago. I'm in my early 40s. I am an adult. But you put me in front of some people, and I forget that. I really forget that. I forget that I'm an adult. I forget how old I am. And so my loving sponsor says, "Well, what can we do about that?" And I said, I don't know. And she says, "Well, adults have keys. They have keys to cars. They have keys to houses. They have keys to where they work. Adults have keys." So she said, when you go into one of those situations, she said, you take your keys and you hang on to them. And that helped because adults have keys, And that's been part of my journey, is letting my physical age, my spiritual age, my emotional age all kind of come and be the same age, which is kind of neat. I kind of like being an adult. So I've gone through the steps using the big books of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm so grateful to be here at this conference and getting support on that. And the Al-Anon in my area, I don't get a lot of support on that, and I really appreciate that. That's a nice gift. So I'm going on doing my wonderful Al-Anon deal, knowing that something has saved my life, literally changed my life, and now is a wonderful way of life for me. And things are good. Things are going great. And I've completed the steps in the worst and deepest of ways. And so then about 2 years ago, I was at a conference, and much like this one, we were going through the steps, through workshops and everything, and we came across step 9, and I knew I was real clean on step 9. I was real clean on step 9. I had done the deals. I had made those direct amends. But something kept gnawing at me, like not big time, but just making me a little uncomfortable hanging around this step. And so like you told me to do, I took it to prayer. And I said, God, I don't know what's going on. It doesn't seem like a really big deal, but it seems like I'm having a little anxiety. And if somebody else needs to be on that list, I wish you'd let me know about it. And I was given an insight that I'd like to share. And that was that there were people in my life who were very special to me that I never thanked. And I'm talking about what I call good amends. This is what was given to me. That there was a woman when I was in high school, when I thought I was completely invisible and sitting on the back row. She found me and she said, "Come up here and you're going to get active in after-school activities." So when I was going through these steps again, I realized that there were some people who had been, call them angels, call them whatever, who had literally saved my life. And I made that list, and I contacted these people. And I told this woman, I called her back, I found her back in Odessa, Texas, where I grew up, graduated from high school. And she was in the phone book, which amazed me. And I called her and I said, I never told you when you were in my life how important you were to me at that time and how you saved my life. And I said, I am in a program called Al-Anon, and I would like to make very, very good amends to you. You're a very, very strong teacher. You're a very, very great person. And that felt good, and that felt complete. So I continued to review my life, and there were several people. A crazy one was a woman down in Miami that gave me a pair of socks one time. I mean, I was desperate. And she gave me a pair of socks. Okay, I tracked her down. I thanked her for that. I tracked down some of the people that introduced me to this program because some of them had kind of gone on, and I'd gone another direction. And I tracked them down, and I said, I need to make good amends to you. You were very, very important to me. So now when I come through this step, it feels good. It feels complete. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And now we're going to have Susan share, and then we're going to ask you to respond to this step also. So, Susan?
Hi, I'm Susan. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Susan.
It's kind of funny. Dave asked me this morning to share on it, and I thought it was tomorrow, so I was like, yeah, no problem. And I looked at my schedule, and I was like, what's today? And I was thinking, what do I possibly have to share on the 8th and 9th step? You know, my words of wisdom that I can share with you people. And I actually had a girlfriend last week. She came up to me, and I could tell there was like an awkwardness between us. And I said, what's the matter? She goes, I'm angry at you. And I'm like, why? She's like, you're not being an example. And I just had to laugh. You know, I was flirting with a guy that I shouldn't have been flirting with. You know, and with all my girlfriends, I say to them, I'm going to be an example. You know, if nothing else, that's what I'm going to be. So I'm thinking of that when I'm thinking of what I can share on the 8th and 9th step. And I needed to center myself, so I laid down and closed my eyes and pulled open the big book, you know, after laying there for a little bit, and I'm looking through it, and I'm like, ooh, there's lots of good stuff in here. And I'm sharing a room with a few other people, and I'm up in the loft, and I kind of yelled over, what do you guys know on the 8th and 9th step? And my friend David Swan back there, he goes, oh, that's one of those optional ones. You don't have to do that. And then my friend Wyan, he goes, you can borrow my big book. It has all Don Pritz's words in it. you can share that. You know, but I'm originally from New York, and my sponsor back there, Eddie C., he used to say to me, no big shot, no little shot, one shot and we're all shot. All I have is my own experience, strength, and hope to share with you, and that's it. And the first few times I went to make amends to people were really bad. I had not done a 4-step. So it basically was you know, all the blame stuff. And it didn't go over well at all. I remember my dad has been really key in my life the past 2 years, so I'm going to share about him. The first time I went to him to make amends, you know, I think a lot of us have similar stories. You know, the alcoholic family, those chapters in the big book, 2 wives. I hated them in the beginning. I mean, it's just so much gross stuff in the alcoholic family. Neither one of my parents are alcoholic, but it comes down through the generations in my family. My one grandfather was sober 20 years in AA. He was one of those way old-timers. He was really funny, big Irishman. My other grandfather, though, was a drunk that ended up dying in a room full of bottles. Nobody liked the man. I was not allowed around him when I was a kid. So the first time I went to my father throughout the years, there was a turning point, though. 2 years ago, Camille, as a matter of fact, came out here and did a spiritual conference with a group of women. There were about 50 of us. And we did a third step out by the lake. And the power of that third step, doing it with a group of women, was unbelievable. I had never felt so protected before. The feeling, just like I felt like I was just enveloped in this like spiritual grace or something. You know, it's hard to describe, but I just felt so safe at that point. And I went on to do another fourth step on my father. And this time, the blame was gone. Nothing in that, the first column, yeah, there was lots of, of that horrible stuff. But the third and the fourth column, it was my part, and I was able to see where I terrorized my mother and my father with my drinking. And not just my drinking, but my entire attitude and my entire being. And I didn't quickly go out and make amends. I started talking to people. I started going on walks with friends. Dottie's one of them. And we would just talk, and she would listen, and then she would share her experience, strength, and hope with me. The fellowship is so key in all of these steps. When I hear other people with their experiences, I can hear what I want. I can also hear what I don't want. And I so desperately wanted a relationship with my father. And I started seeking out the people that had that kind of a relationship and seeing how they went about doing that. And as I went through the fifth and the sixth and the seventh step, I just started feeling lighter around my father. I was always the one who called him. I called once a week. I talked to my mom, for 10, 15 minutes, and then my dad would get on the phone. We'd talk for about 5 minutes. And what started happening during that time period was my dad would call me. It was unbelievable. I hadn't even done the 8th and the 9th step yet, but our relationship started developing, where I was a different person around him. I was no longer an angry bitch at him. He would call me up. I remember my birthday. My dad used to, for Christmas, we had his little mailboxes my mom made, and she'd line them up on the mantle above the fireplace, even as adults, and my dad would put money in it for each one of us, and that was the present. For my birthday, same thing, I would get money. And this one birthday, I got in the mailbox this box, and I'm like, and it was like with my dad's handwriting, and I open it up, it's like brown wrapper. I open it up, and it's a cigar box, the brand that he used to smoke. I flip open the lid, and it's lined with foam, and I take out the first layer of foam, and there's Reese peanut butter cups. And I take out the Reese peanut butter cups, and underneath are Cadbury cream eggs, I take out the Cadbury cream eggs, and there's a birch bark heart from one of the trees that must have shed some of the bark, cut out with an arrow through it, a birch bark arrow painted red with an "I love you, love Dad." It was incredible. And it says it all. And when I finally went to make the direct amends with him, I decided not to go into the childhood episodes. I decided to leave all that in the past. This was the present, and this is the relationship I wanted to have with him. And so I just said, I know that I was a difficult daughter to you and Mom. No specific instances, nothing. And I shared this at the last conference, and I'm going to share it again. My dad said to me, "Susan, I am so sorry for the things that happened when you were a child." And he brought up one specific instance that was just a nightmare. And he talked about it, and he said, "Can you ever forgive me?" You know, what is that? That's the grace of God. You know, that's Camille taking us out to the lake. You know, sitting there with 50 women. What happened was I was sent on a business trip back to Connecticut, and I was about an hour and a half away from my parents' house. And I was supposed to see them a certain weekend, and work just got crazy. And it ended up my trip was postponed about 5 days. And you know, this is where you were saying, don't put off the amends. Don't put off the amends. I am so grateful that I did that. I walked into my parents' house at 8 o'clock on this Thursday evening. At 8:30, we were on the way to the hospital. I mean, it astounds me. I am 2,000 miles away, and within a half an hour, you know, I'm there for my family. We walked into the hospital, and we knew, you know, he was sick for about 4 months, and it was like, it was one of the hardest experiences I've ever gone through, seeing my dad sick. He was not himself. But I was able to be there for him. I have a job now, you know. I have a job where I have an income that allowed me to fly back and forth and be there for my family. I didn't have that when I first came in. I was the biggest mooch, you know. I'd rather spend my quarters on the arcade games than put any in the basket. Serious. You know, but my dad died in January, and I talked to him the day before he died, and I said to him, he was horribly sick, absolutely horribly sick, no chance of having any kind of a healthy life. And I said to him, Dad, whatever decision you make, you know, we'll support you, you know, and he made his decision. And I miss him, you know, I miss him terribly. I didn't like him for years. Hated him for years. You know, but it's finally like my heart can open up, and I tell you the blessings that come from working this program and following through and not giving up. So many times I just wanted to give up, like, I can't swear, this is being recorded. Forget this, you know, it's too hard. But it really is, so that's my deal. I'm grateful to be here, and thank you.
So, would you care to share with us and continue this meeting? Please.
I'm Cookie and I'm an alcoholic. Hello. I want to say a couple things that I think are really important. A lot of things have happened in my sponsorship in the last year, and I sponsor a few women. I have the wonderful opportunity to do that. And we've had a couple of slips coming from people that are over 8 years sober. And one of the things that happens with that, I don't know. Oh, there we go. And one of the things that happened with that was that both of them came back and both of them said to me, well, you know, what you told me was right. And I said, which part? And they said, you said if I didn't do all of my amends, I'd drink again. I want you to know, if you're sitting out there and sitting on amends and thinking you're going to get out of them, it doesn't happen that way. You know, Bill said that in one of his writings that somebody asked him about, they were having some problems, and he said, did you leave anything too big or too small out of your fifth step? Have you made all of your amends, and are you intensively working with others? And I can pretty much fit those someplace today when I'm not doing well. You know, and one of the other things I think is important is when I decided to do my amends, I would love to do any kind of amends other than the ones I was supposed to be doing. And I had a sponsor that pointed that out to me. And what she said was I had to do a dress rehearsal with her, and I had to make the amends to my sponsor that I was going to make to the person I was going to make them to. I want to tell you, they got real clear by the time I was done. And one of the things that happened with that is she said, before you go in, you have to be very sure on how you harmed someone. You know, you're not going in there to grovel, which was my favorite thing to do. You're going in there to mend. And so I have to figure out, did I spiritually, mentally, emotionally, or physically damage this person? You know, and it's like for my parents, I wasn't the type of person who went out and punched you in the nose. I was the type of person that didn't show up. People, I'm not too familiar with too many religions, but they talk about the sins of omission and the sins of commission. And I just wasn't there. My mom was in the hospital, and I just didn't show up because I was busy drinking. And, that was typical of my behavior. I had a girlfriend that used to drive by my house every day wondering if I was dead yet or not. That's the kind of friend I was. Did I damage her spiritually? She said she went to church every Sunday and prayed that maybe I'd make it through whatever it was because she cared about me. She did that for 2 years. Did I need to make amends to her? Yeah, I harmed her spiritually. For all that time, she may not have believed that anything was working. It turned out good, but I needed to say that to her. And I went to my parents, and my parents just said, "Oh, honey, all we want you to do is to be happy." And don't you love that? You don't have to tell us anything. No. And I just said, I want you to know that I know this. And so I told them that I was terribly disappointed in myself, and I know that they were disappointed in me. And that I hurt them spiritually and mentally and emotionally. They were worried about me for a long time, and they believe, and it must have been difficult for them to look at me do that. And, that's not the person I wanted to be. That is not the person I wanted to be. And so for then until the day that my father died, I went over to my parents' house 1 day a week, and I was happy. It didn't matter what was going on in my life. I went over there more often than that, but 1 day a week I specifically went over, and I was happy, because that's what they asked. And so I can't tell somebody how I'm going to make amends to them. They're going to tell me how I am going to mend it. I have to ask them, what can I do to make this right? And they had told me. And the glory of that for me was that when on my father's deathbed, it was so important for me. I had been such a huge disappointment to my parents for so many years. And on my father's deathbed, he looked at me and he said, "I want you to know that I am so proud of you." And that was all clean between me and my dad. And all of my amends are made, and I just have the ones that I create every day. But all those ones are made. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for knowing now that when I make amends, I have to be very clear on what I am trying to mend. Where did I harm that person? I've had people make amends to me and come up and go, "I'm so sorry, and I want to make amends." And I'll stand there. For what? I was down. And I said, "Well, how did this harm me?" "You didn't harm me, honey. You're harming yourself, but you're not harming me." And I think that's real important, especially for women, because I think we can take on a lot of stuff that's not ours. And just make amends for everything because the world's round. So those are some of the things that I learned, and I hope they're helpful to you. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Scott Lee. I'm an alcoholic. I have two things I want to talk about. One was my motivation for making the amends, because I wasn't real eager. And I don't think we see eager too often, but they got me here in the fourth step with that. And it said, for when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the Spirit. It occurred to me that I didn't want my soul to stand naked before my Creator one day, guilty of having done something that left someone else with a resentment that shut them off from the sunlight of the Spirit. It seemed to me that the price on that was awfully high. And that really got me kind of going on the amends. And like so many of the men that I've been privileged to sponsor, when I got here, I thought I'd committed the unforgivable sin. And it seems pretty common. And what I had was an amend that I owed to someone who was already gone. And what I had done, and if someone else has done this and you don't think it's wrong, that's fine with me. This is my thing. But I had paid for an abortion when I was in my early 20s, and as far as I was concerned, I'd paid to have one of my own children murdered. And boy, my spirit could not make peace with that. And fortunately enough, the direction was in the book. And it was shown to me by someone who had experience, who had love, who had care, and who knew what to do. And it was in the 9th step, and I couldn't see it. And it was shown to me. And it says, some people cannot be seen. We send them an honest letter. And I did that. I sat and I wrote a letter to that child. And boy, did I cry. And I think I need to do another one because I need to make sure I keep these things clean. Particularly, I think, for me, the ones that are already on the other side. And I got such a tremendous healing and cleansing from that. And boy, I'm telling you, I cried a gallon. And those tears were so... When I finished with that, I felt like my spirit had had a warm shower. And it said to send him the letter. And from where I was, as far as I'm concerned, where that child is in heaven. And that's a long way from where I was. And so I addressed it to this child, Heaven, and my sponsor said to put extra postage on. And no return address, and I did that. And I got free of the unforgivable sin. And I've had the experience on an amazing number of occasions to sit with someone else who would need to make that exact amend, or an amend to someone on the other side, a grandparent, a parent, a sibling, whoever, and to sit and hold them as they cried, and to watch them address the letter, to sign it love, and address the letter, and mail it. And a fella asked me one time, he said, rather than mail it, what I'd like to do is not in the sense of destroying it, but to, since I believe this person is in heaven, to light it and send it up to them in smoke. So, who am I? And so that's another way that I've seen it effectively sent. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name's Henry. I'm alcoholic.
Hi, Henry.
Everybody, it's good to be here. When I need help, I need spiritual help. And I'm really grateful to be here at the conference, and I want to thank everybody for being here. I just get a lot of help when I come out here. And I came from St. Louis, and as you all might imagine, if I had somehow just stopped along the way somewhere and expected to get the kind of help that I get by being here, I wouldn't be getting it. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is that the ninth step for me is the last part of the work that started in the inventory process. If by the grace of God I was fortunate enough to be an alcoholic who was brought to Alcoholics Anonymous and could acknowledge that I did need to be here and that there was something for me here and get started in the work in the fourth step, I can't expect to come into the consciousness of God's presence and to experience what the founders of this program experienced without going forward into the work into the ninth step. And for me, it's real easy for me to know when I haven't completed my ninth step in different areas, and that's how I feel. If I'm still harboring measures of fear, if I still think of another person and I still feel resentful about something, if I feel like they did something wrong, if I feel like they, if only they were different, if I look at institutions and if only that was different, and I take that on and I think about my own life in that context that I'd be feeling better, I'd be more useful. And by the way, I think that is the purpose of this step. I think it says that our real purpose when we get here is to be fitted out to be of maximum usefulness to God and those about us. And I know that if I'm not experiencing an awareness of God's presence, I'm not going to be of much use to you. I could sit around and talk about problems with you till the cows come home, but that's not what we're looking for here. I had an experience just a couple weeks ago with my brother who 12-stepped me into this program going on 12 years ago. He, on the other hand, didn't go through the processes and went back out and drank with a little over 10 years sober. And that set us at a distance. And as you might expect, the amends process took hold of my brother first, because I had a lot to tell him once I came into this program. And that's kind of the way our relationship stood for about 10 years, and up until last week. And I had been through this work again just this last winter as part of a workshop. And I knew that there was something that had to be done with my brother, and fortunately there's a higher power at work in my life and in the lives of other people around me. I sought advice, and I was directed towards prayer. And I was willing to pray, but I didn't know what to do, and we hear a lot about the action that this program requires. Well, I was willing to do something, but I had to be shown what to do, and I was shown that in the form of my character defects rising their ugly heads. I worked with my brother, have my whole life. A situation was presented to me that was just perfect. It was a perfect way for me to be me, which is to get all those character defects out there and get them into operation. My brother made a big mistake at work, and that gave me a perfect opportunity to be me. And it just so happened that the day that happened was his birthday. And it's funny how God works. It wasn't his AA birthday because he lost that. It was his belly button birthday. And the whole thing gave me a perfect opportunity to see just how I've been with my brother my whole life. And I went through the pain in the middle steps, and it was painful to take a hard look at myself and realize that these were things that had been operating for 43 years. And, God gave me the opportunity on a Saturday that normally I don't see my brother on a Saturday. I see him 5 days a week at work. But this just so happened that this Saturday was a Saturday of our company summer picnic. And normally at these things, my brother and I don't communicate about when each of us are going to be there and what's going to happen and so on and so forth. Well, it's like I knew after having gone through the process of the 48 hours of being me and realizing that the things that were on the inventory list last winter were operating and experiencing the willingness to have this change, and I mean really, really being willing to have this change. It didn't surprise me when he showed up, 5 or 10 minutes after I did, and it didn't surprise me when I had the opportunity to go up and really for the first time look my brother in the eye and say, that deal last week on your birthday, obviously I didn't even say happy birthday. How could I? I was being me. And that, this has just got to end. This just isn't the way life is supposed to be lived. And there were very few words, and his response was gracious, as most of these things are when they occur. And I know today, standing here before you, that I don't have to suffer anymore the way I've suffered my whole life in the context of my relationship with my brother, who I've always loved. But see, I can't love, but I can, and it has to come from the source of love. And I think, by the grace of God, working through this program, the channel has been widened a little bit. He may need to come back into this program someday. I don't know. He may be an Al-Anon. I don't know. But today I feel a little more fit, to go about God's business. And I want to thank all of you and your consciousness of this process for having me be here. Thanks.
My name's Matthew. I'm alcoholic. This past year, well, I can start with this. At 4.5 years sober, I knew I was going to drink again, and I had a man in front of me who said, I don't have a solution for you, but I have a solution for alcoholism. And I didn't know the wisdom in that was that I would be totally changed if I submitted myself to this process in our book. And I began in October of 90 and got a complete 8-step list, started to make amends, made amends to the people that were doing the work, people in AA, my family, employer, ex-girlfriends, and then petered out. And it was something that was echoed in the second step workshop last night. I could tell you my reliance was on God, but if you looked at my life, I was trying to find power from a whole bunch of different sources: credit rating, approval from women, bragging about how many guys I'm working with, taking them through the book, all that kind of stuff, physical fitness, whatever, something to keep my ego intact. And the long and short of it was, this last year, I was at a place where I was suicidal. And I was seeing a therapist, and I was going to a psychiatrist, and he wanted to put me on meds. My family is under study at Johns Hopkins for bipolar disorder. So I thought, maybe there's something to this. I mean, let's go look at it again. It's nothing I hadn't looked at before. And I made the mistake, like I usually do, of calling my sponsor. And he said, his name's Gary. He might be here tomorrow night. And I made a mistake. He said, come on up here. He lives in Indianapolis. And I spent a couple of days with him, just riding around with him, going to work, and talked to him about what was going on. And the long and short of it was, he said, I would bet if you will finish all of your amends and finish paying the money back, your recovery will stop being like a roller coaster, and this will stop happening. And he said that was his experience. And I didn't want to believe that. I thought, I want something I can work on. It was like when I first started looking at the first step. Give me something I can work on. I don't want to really believe I'm powerless. And I really didn't believe anything would happen. I finished, there were like 3 personal amends to make. I finished paying about $600 or $700 off, which was a lot. It was down from over $10,000. Finished that, got in a workshop, and it's been amazing. The emotional balance that I have now and the places that I can go in meditation, and that's all personal. But I don't think amends are really for me. It's more for the people around me that really value having me in their lives. My little nephew just turned 14, and he's never seen me drink, but he's heard stories, and he just thinks I'm crazy. He got accepted to this all-boys school, and in the personal interview, they asked him, who's your favorite person? Who's your idol? And he said, my dad. And they said, you can't use your dad. Who else? And he thought about it, and his mom and dad were sitting right there, my brother and his wife, and he said, I'd have to say my Uncle Matt. because he's really surmounted just incredible obstacles in his life. And I didn't have the heart to tell him that all that stuff was self-imposed. You've seen me rise from the ashes. You didn't see all this, the decisions I made based on self behind the scenes. The great thing, though, too, is I went on a family reunion last month, and there's 7 of us kids, and everybody's in their 12-step groups or has their meds, all the dysfunction's straightened out, all the skeletons are out of the closet, and we are a family. In one of the forewords it says, what speaks highly of this process is not just the large numbers of recoveries, but reunited homes. And I thought, well, that's easy if you have a small nuclear family and you live around each other, and we're scattered across the country, and we're all on this family reunion. My mom even invited my dad, and they've been divorced 20 years. And we are a reunited home. We all have a common purpose now. We help each other. The great thing, though, and one of the things, the promises in the 9th step in the book, it says one of the purposes is so I can find more effectiveness working with people. And I can see that now. I'm working with these guys, and I can see the delusions that I was suffering from. Get into amends and start making them till you feel good. Now, I never drank until I feel good, but I'm going to make amends till I feel good and then quit. And I got into a bunch of activity in AA. I was doing 6 service commitments, and I was reading about 6 books at a time. And if you'd asked me where I was at, I'd tell you, well, I'm in amends. But when we really look at it, I'm just, in a tailspin again. I'm working with these guys, and I understand the value now of actually finishing them, because I'm watching these guys have specific problems in the same areas that they're neglecting their amends from. This guy that I used to sponsor called me a couple weeks ago. His wife left him that day, and I went over, and I'm so far past the point of thinking I can rescue somebody. I'm like, well, first off, I'm taking all your Victoria's Secrets catalogs because you're not going to be using those anymore. And then I said, second of all, let's look at your amends list, because whether she comes back or not, you're still going to die if you don't make these. And then I'm watching that scary thing of watching people with some time. And I have a guy that I sponsor, just doesn't, he's like, I don't care how long you've been sober, he's always up my butt. I start thinking that my long period of sobriety and self-discipline qualifies me to drink like other people. And I watch people do that. I work as a waiter and I serve alcohol, and I'll watch people drink with impunity. And it's rare, but occasionally that thought will hit me like, I could do that. And then I'm like, wait a minute, he just left his beer sweat, and he's done with dinner, and he's leaving, and I can't do that. I've never been able to do that in my history. But I had to echo something that Cookie had said, finish them. Golly, there's so much more to life than hanging around having something that my conscience still condemns me for when I can just be done with it. Thinking about the amends has been so hard, but making them was not nearly as hard as thinking about it. Thanks.
I'm an alcoholic named Mike. My home group is Cherry Creek Promises in Denver. There was a time before I got here where I could listen to somebody up on a stage or somewhere else talk about their experience and go ahead and cry in front of me, and I would have said, what is the matter with this person? Get a grip. And today, I could listen to you, and I could watch you cry as you were speaking, and I could start crying too, because I've gotten in touch with enough of my experiences and feelings so that I know what you were feeling when you were up there. And I think for all of us, we know what each other is feeling, and that's part of the fellowship. Amends are so important to me. It lets me walk up to somebody and look them in the eye, where I couldn't do it a minute before. I got divorced 5 years ago, and we had a horrible end to the marriage. And we didn't speak for a couple of years. We didn't speak civilly for a couple of years after that. And I was working on my 4th step and 5th step and so on. And I knew that there were amends to be made, and I wasn't ready to do it yet. I could do some things, though. I could begin to be civil to my ex, and that's what I did. And I started talking to her as I would talk to anybody else, without getting angry right away, without wanting to kill her. I could leave her alone, too, instead of trying to insinuate myself into every little nook and cranny of her life just to keep messing with her. And these were the beginnings of my amends. And then one day, I don't know why, I was ready to make a formal amend to her, and I asked her if I could stop by, and I did. And with her husband and our child and her child upstairs, we sat for a half hour, and I made amends. And I was prepared to do this because I had done a complete 4th step on this, and a 5th step, and a 6th, and a 7th, and an 8th. And I knew what I had done. I knew that because of my selfishness, I did this and I know that it hurt you this way. Because of my fear of your leaving me, I did this and that, and I know it hurt you this way. And I could tell her exactly the nature of my wrongs. Precisely. I don't know if I would do that if I had cheated a car dealer out of $100. I would probably walk in and say, you know, I did this. It was wrong. I'm very sorry. Here's $100. If there's anything else I can do to make it up, tell me right now, or call me and let me know if I can do something. I wouldn't get into that kind of detail. But with my ex, it was the beginning of a new relationship. I can now talk to her. She's getting divorced, and she called me, of all people, to get a shoulder and an ear. And that's one of the miracles of making amends for me. That I can repair these relationships. I can walk with dignity. I can stand up straight. I can look her in the eye. And our child doesn't have two parents who are fighting. Isn't that amazing? I have an amend I have yet to make. And it's a scheduling problem that keeps me from making it. But when I lived in Florida, I embezzled money from area service from a different fellowship. And I called my sponsor from Florida and I said, how do I do this? What's the best way? I said, obviously I can write a check and I can send it anonymously. I can write a check. I can send a note to area service, or I can show up. He says, why don't you show up? Because when you stand up there and tell everybody what you did, and this is what drove you to it, and this is how you're trying to make it right, and what else can you do, you might save somebody else's life. And I thought, well, by God, I'll do that. It can't be that terrible. It can only improve me. It can help me in my life. It can keep me from drinking one more day. And so that's what I'm going to do. And I'm fully prepared to do this because I made a commitment when I took a third step that I was fully prepared to do everything that it took to stay sober. And so I'll do that. It's not something I greatly desire to do, stand up in front of 60 or 70 people and tell them I stole money from them. But I'm going to do it because it's what I need to do, and it's what they need to hear. I've found that when people come to me and explain to me that they harmed me this way, and this is what was going on inside them when they did it, and this is how they think it hurt me, it clears the air immediately and completely. It's so different than I'm sorry. And even when I make an apology today, as opposed to an amend, it's not just I'm sorry, it's I'm sorry, I was wrong. I did this. And I'm really sorry. What can I do? And it works out much better because people can say, I'm sorry all day long, as our first lady said. And it doesn't mean as much. So anyway, thank you.
Thanks.
My name is Shelley. I am an alcoholic. These are awesome steps, 8 and 9. And I don't think I've had the privilege of walking because the power's always been there. And I was willing to go to any lengths of a victory of alcohol. And briefly, as a result of continuously making amends to my husband for the harm I've caused him, having cleaned up the past, it's now in the present. Every time I go through the work, there's some other harm I cause, and I'm willing to clean it up. And sometimes he doesn't want to hear it, but I'll still say it out loud. You know, this is what I've done to you. And I tried to take corrective measures and stick to it, and we started having a relationship, which is really for the first time in, I think, 27 years. Because it took a while for the hurt to heal, for all the disappointments, for all that stuff that we tried to hold on, or the spirit did, as a matter of fact. So our slates are clean for the first time, and it's really great. What I wanted to talk about, 2 more things, is my father never got to see me sober, and I really appreciated your story. It was awesome. My mother sends me cards now for occasions. She's never done that. But with my father, he never seen me sober, and I got to go back, and when he was buried, I had told him I'd never been the daughter that he expected. And that was my amen to him, exactly as you had said it. And I said the 3rd step prayer and the 7th step prayer, and I was free. But later on, what cropped up is my envy of homeless, no good people, that they're still living and my father is dead. So that used to really eat at me, till I had to write about it. And as a result of, in that piece of work, I got to see my selfishness, like, I think I know when people ought to die and how they ought to die. Well, anyways, But, so my amend to my father was, since he loved kids, I went to a beautiful garden, and I started talking to him. And it was awesome. And I got free of this resentment I had that my father died. My father left everything intact. He went to sleep and he went on. It was as simple as that, like, it was time for him to go. He was 84 years old, but, could not process it till I let him know that I'm sober, my husband's sober. I said, you don't have to blame him anymore for me drinking and all that stuff. I said, it's over and done with, We're both sober. If you want to be the watchman over the factory, you're more than welcome to do it. Because he'd always wanted that for me, that I have a big factory and he'd be the watchman, And so cool. He loved me a lot, and I never knew that. A financial amend, which they're always very important, because it's hard to believe this is not my money, even though I go to work. I'm the one supposedly, I'm the one that does this. No, the power of God through me allows me to go to work. And in my old job, I made a bad decision. I ended up owing money, so I had to go make the amend. I'm owing you money. What's the best deal I could make? And he said so, and through circumstances, I couldn't keep up the deal, so I had to go back again. Well, about the third time, he said, well, why don't you get a job and pay me back? I said, all right, seems like... So out of my mouth comes out, I'm willing to... I'll get a job January 1st. And somehow, before January 1st, I was talking to someone, and they said, there's a job available here. And I got a job. And I paid back the people, as I agreed, every month $100 for 15 months. In the month of June, the people were paid off. Half of my husband's salary goes out on amends. Harm. Decisions made, bad decisions, and people need to be paid back. And we're still taken care of. My fear was I'll never get to come up here again, because all this money's going out. But, it's awesome if you're willing to believe it's not your money. That this money just comes into your life to do what needs to be done, and you'll get taken care of. It was so hard to give away $100 every month, because my mind says, look what you put up here with, like, big deal. The relationship with my son, we always thought that, we threw him away. We hushed him away. I mean, I was never there for him. I went to one PTA meeting, and I came drunk, and I didn't think it'd be a good idea to go again, and I never did, He wanted to be a football player, and I went with him, and I saw the coach, and the coach said he needed to lose weight, and I was drunk. I said, how dare you tell me, you Irishman, my son needs to lose weight, I said, you shouldn't go there, you shouldn't play that. It's a bad game, The disease centers in the mind. And as a result, after a couple of years, just talking on the phone, visiting a little while, we're able to have a conversation. And he remembers our birthdays, our sober birthdays. And that's a miracle. I want to thank you all for sharing with us.
Thank you.
My name is Shem. I'm an alcoholic from northern New Mexico. And I'm in no danger of being well soon. I'm on the second column of the fourth step. But the action thing of this, I realized I was state commissioner in Mexico this year. The topic was Pathway to the Promises. And at this time that we are closing, I happen to be wearing probably the page after the promises are written on this shirt, and they're in Bill W.'s handwriting. This is a very busy T-shirt. There's a lot on it. We got Bill W., Dr. Bob, and the handwriting of Bill W. of his first version of the promises. So I just, as I said, I have no business even being up here talking about 8 or 9. It seems a long pathway to 8 and 9, but I'm just so grateful to be here. And who is sponsoring me through these steps is our chairman, Tom. And I would like you, if whatever, when we do our moment of silence or whatever, to wish him a safe trip back to us. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And again, it's been interesting to be involved with this fellowship and this weekend. And we really have become family. And as I hear about the power of what we can do to be healers or well in people's lives, I hope we can see how well we can be in each other's life as we walk out of here into the future. Thank you.